and welcome back to the Worcester Senior Center Stay Connected programming on Channel 192. My name is Suki Lapin, and I am the program coordinator at the Worcester Senior Center. Today, in collaboration with the JCC, we welcome Mark Epstein, author of his new book, They Call Me Pathfinder, Education, Basketball, and Equality, in conversation with former Mayor Tim Cooney. It is my pleasure to introduce former Mayor of the City of Worcester, Tim Cooney. Tim Cooney is Worcester born and bred. He graduated from both St. John's High School and Assumption College with a degree in history and government. He holds a master's degree from Worcester State College. He captained the Assumption basketball team in 1961 and 1962. He went on to become a teacher and coach during the 1960s and 1970s on the high school and college level. After working in the business community, he entered the political world and served as the city councilor of Worcester for 2 decades. He was elected mayor in the 1980s. Cooney retired in 2019 as director of the Central Massachusetts Safety Council, a position he held for 45 years. Cooney and his wife Joyce have 3 sons and 4 grandchildren. Please welcome Nancy Greenberg, Worcester Jewish Community Center's Cultural Arts and Senior Adult Director, who will now introduce author Mark Epstein.
Thank you, Suki. It is truly an honor and a privilege to collaborate with you and the Worcester Senior Center once again. It is my pleasure to introduce Worcester native Mark Epstein, author of the new book, They Call Me Pathfinder, Education, Basketball, and Equality. Pathfinder, as Mark is known, grew up in Worcester, spending every waking moment dreaming of playing professional basketball. He attended Worcester Boys Trade High and Worcester State, and upon graduation, went to work at his dad's sporting goods store, Charlie's Surplus. I'm sure some of you remember Charlie's Surplus on Water Street and the Charlie's Surplus 10-mile road race. Faced with some personal challenges, Mark decided to head south for a fresh start. He landed in Charleston, South Carolina, where he went back to school and became a teacher, counselor, and coach in the Charleston County School District. It was in Charleston that Mark was able to realize his dream of becoming a difference maker and a change agent by using his education and background in basketball to work toward improving education in the low country of South Carolina. To quote Mark, "Sometimes dreams do come true by luck, blind faith, and support from family and friends." Ultimately, Pathfinder's story is one of perseverance in the face of obstacles, transformation, and the journey toward finding one's purpose in life. After a 27-year career in the Charleston schools, Mark retired. He and his wife, Barbara, live in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and enjoy spending time with their children and grandchildren. Please welcome Mark Epstein.
Thank you very much, Nancy, and thank you, Suki. It's great to be back in Worcester, even though we don't have the same temperature here that you do right now up there. But every time I have an opportunity to be around my home folks, it's a natural excitement that comes over me, and this is just awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. I wrote a book, and there were a lot of reasons I wrote They Call Me Pathfinder, Education, Basketball, Equality. And I had been encouraged for years from several people. They knew there was a story. I knew there was a story. I just didn't know if anyone wanted to hear it. I also didn't know if I knew how to write it. So I held off for a long time, but Barbara, my wife, spent a lot of time encouraging me almost on a weekly basis for years. And a couple other friends from Worcester, too, kept saying, when are you going to write your book? And I would laugh. and I was laughing, but I was actually scripting it in my mind for years on how I wanted to present it, because it was personal. And, hearing the introduction and listening to the basketball part of it, this wasn't a brag book, and this wasn't because I was a famous basketball player. I struggled to be competitive. But that shows you the introduction, listening to it, how immature and unmotivated I was about everything else that should have been a priority. When I hear someone else talking about my dream of playing professional basketball, I'm almost embarrassed by it. But yet, I held on to it for a long time, unfortunately. And it just kind of reminded me of where I was when I left Worcester. And, the book has turned into something that I didn't expect. When I got through writing it, I wrote it for my family, but I published it to inspire others who were overcoming or trying to overcome adversity, which we all do. Everyone's got a story. You can't go through life without having some ups and downs and hits along the way. And I know that. So this was personal for me, and it was traumatic for me. And there were lots of people that helped me overcome some of the things I was facing. And it's turned into a 5-star book, a full 5-star book on Amazon. The reviews are just mind-boggling to me when I look at them online. I'm appreciative of how people have accepted it. It's a book that tells a story of a lost boy from Worcester who didn't know how to grow up. And that's basically, I think, a lot of kids in their younger years and through their teenage years and young adult who struggle academically, who are unmotivated and immature, which I was, and cost me greatly. I thought I had potential to do some things in society that could impact and improve and help a lot of people, but I was scrambling to find myself, so I was never using that potential in a positive way until I moved away. And it was difficult growing up without any education and interest. And I was sent, not that I should be ashamed of it, but I was encouraged in middle school by a counselor in 8th grade to go to Worcester Boys Trade School. I was so far removed from the academics, they thought I needed a trade, and they were right. And I saw how much trade school did for so many of my friends during the 4 years I was there. It's phenomenal. But it was a mismatch for me. It wasn't the fit. I was taking a trade that I had no interest in, and I don't even know why I selected it, if you want to know the truth, just because it was the only thing I could think of when I filled out as a 14-year-old teenager what trade I wanted to study. And literally, I was always at the bottom of my class throughout my grade school, junior high, and high school, even a trade. And they'd always go around the room every year, and teachers would ask what you wanted to do when you grew up. And my answer was the same. And it was what you mentioned. I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to play in the NBA. And, when I think and everybody would laugh. And I couldn't wait to get home from school and play on the basketball court my father built in our neighborhood for all children and anyone who wanted to use it. It was a full-length court. And that's all I dreamed about from morning till night. And do I wish I could have turned out better? Yeah, of course. But I was lucky that I had so many good mentors along the way. And the one thing I did when I wrote it, I wanted to return to Worcester. And I wanted to talk about what makes Worcester so special. What my memories of Worcester will always be. It's the neighborhoods. It's the neighborhoods. I loved it. I was so darn proud of it growing up, going into different neighborhoods and different ethnicities, and the old school tradition of people never moving away and everyone knowing each other. Worcester's special. I mean, when I have an opportunity to talk about Worcester, my eyes light up. I talk about Water Street in the book. There's some great water. You know, I was 2 years old, remembering running up and down it. Water Street in the mid 50s, 56, 57 is how far back I remember it. It was the hustle and bustle shopping district and business district of Central Mass on weekends. Obviously, the downtown area was also booming, but so wasn't Water Street in Worcester. It was special. It was unique. It was a Jewish community of business people that settled there in their trades, a lot of them, when their families came over from Europe. And that was their first job. And a lot of them never left and passed it on to their children when they passed away. And, you know, I was just always so proud of my dad. We were just always so close. There's a lot of Worcester State College stories because I've always said Worcester State, my bachelor degree from Worcester State will always remain my number one achievement in life. Not even close. From where I came from, to have that is the biggest achievement I could have ever dreamed of. I never could have dreamed I would get a college education. Zero. But I started growing up towards my latter years of trade, and I opened up in the book about it. And I wanted so badly. I knew I was in trouble if I didn't get serious a little bit. I never knew how to study. So I was sneaking around with this big college SAT guidebook and studying on my own. I didn't want to tell anyone. I was afraid to because I didn't think I was going to do well on it. And if they knew I was studying for it, they would want to know what my score was. So my self-esteem as far as academics was so low that I can't even describe it to you. And I put all my eggs into that basket on that SAT and started realizing when I wasn't getting the playing time other future NBA players were getting in high school, that I really needed to start thinking about the bigger picture. And but I never let go of that dream, and I should have. And some of the people I talk about in the book that helped me as mentors and well-known people that I think this is a Worcester story, and it's a South Carolina story. And it's a success story that I was able to share with a lot of students as I went into my second life. I had two lives. I had a Worcester life, and I've had a South Carolina life. I've been here for 32 years. I lived in Worcester for 36. It's almost equal now. My daughters tell me that all the time. I've had two separate lives, and I try to bring them together in one book as a legacy for our family, for my children, grandchildren, and it turned out more than that. But the stories of the Worcester people, I mentioned Jack the Shot Foley. He just passed away. He was my high school coach for 4 years. My mentor, uncle to me, Togo Palazzi, Don LeManager, boys trade, superintendent. When I was there and the athletic director and basketball coach there, my next door neighbor. So you can see I was really caught up with some really top level mentors, Paul Tiverton, my father's close friend. There's stories about George Blaney and Joe O'Brien, successful college coaches in Worcester from Holy Cross and Assumption. I mentioned the McGovern family, Marion, the former colonel in the Mass State Police. I call her little sister. And my best friend growing up in college and throughout later on, Jim McGovern and Kevin and Mike, and then there's stories about D. Rowe, Attorney Burton Berg, and his wife Lois, who were my mentors and saviors, and Arnie Ravelson and his wife Barbara, Kevin O'Sullivan. So there's a lot of Worcester people that are in this book that I use real names, real locations. I love writing about the neighborhoods. I mean, that might have been my favorite part of the book to write about. I get so excited still when I come home. I love driving down Shrewsbury Street. I love going up to Vernon Hill. I love going to the island up of Millbury Street. The West Side growing up. I had a lot of black friends through playing basketball. You know, I was integrated into not living with any prejudice because of my parents' influence at a very young age. You know, and there were stories about Charlie Surplus and the family of workers that we had, the Georgia Queries, the Bobcousy, the late Dave Mann, late Tom Tiverton, Paul's brother, Kathy Fitzpatrick, and Jim McCaffrey, Sophia Basham, living in Hartford now. People that we were like a family at Charlie's. But that was my father's personality. If you knew him, you had a friend for life, and you never even realized you had just met him. He was a big-hearted guy, and he opened up a lot of opportunities for me. And after I graduated from Worcester State, I joined in the business, and it was special. I learned so much from him. It was invaluable after I moved away. You know, the Charlie's Road Race became popular. I write about it a lot in the book. A lot of people are responsible for the fact that it became one of the top 100 road races and marathons in the world in 1984. It's a big honor for a Worcester race. I don't think there'll ever be a race ranked in the top 100 out of Central Mass ever again. We had a perfect storm going for us with runners like Bill Rogers and Joan Benoit, the gold medal winner, and Jeff Smith, the Johnny Kellys, both of them, Lynn Jennings, bronze medal winner, Greg Meyer, Boston Marathon winner, Patty Catalano, total legend. You know, it was put together by two PE teachers from Worcester at Doherty High, John Wallace and Tom St. Dennis. My dad and myself knew nothing about the road race business. We got lucky, surrounded ourselves because of my father's personality with a lot of people who wanted to be involved, and he wanted to honor the bicentennial in 1976. It was our first year we had it, and he was excited about doing something for Worcester, and he had a secret love for the sport of long-distance running. And we got involved with Crompton Park basketball, one of the top semi-pro leagues in the country, on the East Coast for sure. And our teams had put us on the map. They're still legendary. We had over 20 draft choices play for us. Back then they had 20 rounds though. But we had the UMass connection of some of my best friends I met along the way from those teams, the Charlie Surplus at Crompton, the Jim Burke, the John Murphy, Bill Endicott, Tom Austin. Then we had the connection of Connecticut with someone who was like a brother to me. I have even a difficult time talking about him to this day. He's passed. I love him dearly. Owen Mahorn and his brother became a famous player in the NBA when he won championships with the Piston bad boy teams, Rick Mahorn. But Owen and myself had a very dear relationship. Freddie Laughlin, and then there were the Gush brothers. I write about Wayne Jones, drafted by the Pistons, and Howie Greenblatt, Cleve Royster. I mean, I can go on and on with our Hartford connection, but they put us on the map and we won a bunch of championships with them. We had some Worcester guys, the Stafford family, John, Dougie, Marvin, they all played for us at one time or another. Gil Pitts. So yeah, you know, it was special memories. Being with my dad, we had the Charlie's Holiday sports night with Richie Denman and Richie Hebner, and Roger Clemens and Dennis Eckersley were there, and Mark Fidrich came, and Tim Cooney was there, and Joe Worley, the congressman, marvelous Marvin Hagler and his trainee, Goody Petronelli. And we had a group of people. Paul Mitchell from Worcester came. It was awesome. And I made a lot of friends from that. And then, you know, I was struggling, though, you know. I didn't know how to keep a relationship. My immaturity was burying me. So I'm dropping all these names, and it sounds exciting, but I was hiding behind the curtain. I had divorced after 2 years. I'm married to my college sweetheart. I went 40 years. We went 40 years without speaking to each other. I never even had a conversation. When I left the house that night, she told me that we probably needed to move on. I didn't know how to talk to an adult in an adult way. And I lived with that for 40 years until we sat down and had dinner a couple of years ago. Then I got remarried, and I probably should have waited. I blame myself for the lack of maturity in that marriage, and just loved my kids. I had a great relationship with them, phenomenal from day one. It's never changed. And to this day, it's still beautiful and perfect in my eyes. Always was. I moved south. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know anybody when I got here, and I didn't know how long I was going to stay. I was shooting a dart at a map, literally, and the journey was torture. My first few years, I spent every waking moment petrified of my new surroundings and who to trust. I developed some bad habits of not being able to trust anyone as my life has gone on from that traumatic second divorce. You know, you think you know people and sometimes you don't, but that's on me. That's on me. I can take the good with the bad. I opened up. I became a leader in the state of South Carolina for educational equality. It's a responsibility that I feel everyone should share. I take mine real seriously. I wrote the book as an inspiration to others and to get involved. We're living in a time where things have gotten out of control, and the timing of the book is great. That's where the education and equality part of the story comes in. They call me Pathfinder, is the nickname my father gave me, but that part of the story of the title doesn't mean a whole lot to me. The second part, education, basketball, equality, means everything to me. And it isn't because I was a great player, but I spent so much time involved in the game in Worcester that my mentors instilled certain values in me that I was able to pass on to my players and my students in the South. And I did it as an honor to them. The lessons from my dad, the lessons from Buster Sherry, D. Rowe, Toga Palazzi, Jack the Shaw, Don LeManager, Burton Berg have stayed with me. I'm forever grateful of my background and heritage of Worcester and Central Mass. And but I have a great life here. It's 2 different cities. They accepted me down here and gave me opportunities I never knew existed. And the impact I was able to make without sounding boastful, I got to be careful because I didn't write this as a brag book. Everyone can make a difference if they take responsibility to improve race relationships in their communities.
Well, Mark is a longtime family friend. I got to know him when he was working at his dad's store, but I really have gotten to know him in the past year. I think we've had a terrible pandemic, but one good thing that's come out of the pandemic is Mark's book. It shed a lot of light on a major problem that's going on that's impacting the entire country, racial justice. And I think Mark should be certainly commended. And I think that's one reason that his book is being so well received. I know I've had the opportunity to become Mark's unofficial agent, unpaid agent, good friend.
I've been paying you.
When I saw Mark Pathfinder's picture with Bill Russell, I said, that is great. It's so good to see people laughing and happy. And I contacted Mark and told him I couldn't wait for the book to come out. He had a review from Nick Katsopoulos, who was a Telegram and Gazette reporter. And it just clicked. I think the whole three-decker story, the fact that about neighborhoods, the fact about sports, how sports breaks down barriers, and Mark went through the basketball situation along with the running. When I was at City Hall, I think I had an opportunity to praise Charlie Epstein for what he did for the city. A lot of people had a chance to run in the road race, but the road race was really something that brought an awful lot of people together, and it wound up at Elm Park, not Central Park. I consider it Central Park because it was designed by the same person that designed Central Park, and one of the oldest parks, probably the second oldest park in the United States. So it's a place, unfortunately, Mark and I worked together a year and a half ago on establishing a monument, something that Pathfinder wanted to do in memory of his dad, and his mother certainly was involved, Sarah, who I got to know through the Worcester Courthouse when I worked for the CMSC, Central Mass Safety Council. But I knew Robert a little bit, and Robert's tied in with this book. Pathfinder has memorialized his brother, sadly passed away in this past year. And it's turned into a book where Mark doesn't want to make any money on it. He wants the money to go to a good cause. So it's a win-win for everybody. It's a tremendous Worcester story. I spoke with Bobcousy, Mr. Basketball, yesterday, and I plan to send him a book. So I'm sure Mark will be hearing from 92-year-old Bobcousy, who's still sharp as a tack and through and through Worcester. He came to Worcester, Cousy did, and he never left, even though he turned into national and international greatness. Tell us about how you got the name Pathfinder. I know you said.
Oh, yeah. No, Tim, thanks for all those kind words. And, having this friendship with you is a bonus that's come out of writing the book. So thank you for that. And what you and Joyce have done for, they call me Pathfinder Education Basketball Equality is terrific. I was a little kid helping my father at the store. I was about 13, 14 years old, and I was getting in his way, and there was a Pathfinder sleeping bag hanging in the store, and he looked over at it, and he said, "Hey, Pathfinder, get out of here. I can't sell any Pathfinders, and I can't, and you're useless too." So it stuck, and it was a lot of fun. It was a nickname he gave to me, and I'm proud to wear it. And it was something that stayed in the family for a long time. And then other people started hearing it and calling me that. And that's how the nickname came.
And very appropriate.
He thought it was appropriate.
Yeah, you took Route 95 and you found your path to your new life, which has been.
Yeah, it was a tough ride.
Yeah, I think there are some stories. I know you mentioned your dad took you and Robert or Bobby up to the 1976 Olympics.
That's right.
All your dad had was one ticket, and you guys were left out. But how did you manage to get in?
Oh, my goodness, yeah. I should have put this story about my brother in the book. And, I'm glad you mentioned Bobby. The day I finished authoring the book, he passed away. And I wasn't going to publish it. I wasn't sure I was going to publish it, but if I was, I was going to make sure I was going to honor him properly. And the money has gone, like you said, to a cancer foundation for treatment in his name. But we were up. My father had a ticket for boxing. It was the finals with Sugar Ray Leonard, and we were trying to get in, and there were about 2,000 or 3,000 people outside after it was sold out, and there were no tickets to be had. And my brother walked up to somebody, I didn't see his face, and he leaned over and he whispered in his ear, "If you don't give me 2 tickets, I'm going to blow the whistle on you." And the guy was scalping him. And I saw him from the back. He was wearing a hat and sunglasses, so I really didn't know who it was. So the next thing I know, my brother is holding up 2 tickets. It was Mick Jagger. And Mick Jagger was scalping tickets. And my brother said, "I know who you are. I recognize you. And if you don't give me 2, I'm going to call the cops on you." So we got 2 front row tickets, and we sat a few seats from Mick Jagger, and Mick's bodyguard weren't too happy because they didn't make the amount of money they were looking for that night, because the Epstein brothers were sitting there in the front row with him for free.
Your dad couldn't believe it.
Yeah, when he came down at intermission, he saw us in front row, and he knew when we all came over, we didn't have tickets. He was like, "How did this happen?" You know, he was sitting in the nosebleeds. It's a great story. And there's another story about Mick Jagger and my dad later on in the book. It has 2 completely different scenarios. But if you read the book, you're going to see how my dad had no clue who he was accusing of stealing his box of boots at
Brookfields.
North Brookfield. And Gil Marshall's farm, where it was a recording studio. It's a classic story of him peddling.
I'm wondering also if you could talk a little bit about going before the Parks and Recreation Commission to get the approval to put the monument at Elm Park, something that you worked hard on.
Yeah, you got it started when you got a unanimous vote with the city council 20 years earlier. My dad told me to hold off and wait until he wasn't around anymore. He was a pretty humble guy. And I waited and waited and waited, and I knew time was running out. And went to the Parks Department, and they passed it unanimously. And now there's a monument that we established through your help and other people's help. And certainly it's appreciated at Elm Park at the finish line of the Charlie Surplus 10-mile road race in memory of the race and my dad. And that was held on June 2nd, 2019. So it was a big event that day. And I think it was a homecoming for me, too, in sorts, where I left a little broken, a little bitter. And that was part of my immaturity, blaming others. And I came back, and I think for the first time, I felt I was back home again. It was a really cathartic moment in many ways. As well as this book.
The work you did at Crampton Park by bringing blacks and whites together to compete and go leave a ball game being friends. I had the opportunity to play at Crampton Park for probably 10 years back in the 60s, but it's great to see what Charlie's Surplus Store did by bringing in so many great talented players to rub elbows, if you will, and to spread the message of racial justice. I think my college term paper was about this racial justice, and I think the Black Like Me book that got you started, Pathfinder, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the impact that book had on you down at South Carolina.
Yeah, my dream shifted a little bit with that Black Like Me in 5th grade. There's no question about it. And in Crampton Park, and rubbing elbows with so many fine African-American black players over those years. Like I said, I was real comfortable in my place with them. And when I moved south and I had an opportunity to use my education background in the school system. I became locked in and driven. I was going to make sure my legacy was not something that was just at one school and working with one group of players, which is real important to me. And I developed great relationships with them, but I wanted to impact society. I was determined. And you say one person can impact society in a humble way? Yeah, they can. I did, and I'm proud of it. Did I do as much as I wanted? And there's still a lot of work to be done, obviously, as we're finding out. My goals have not yet been reached. I still want to change the dropout age to 18 from 17. We're close. There are bills that I put together with a group of state representatives that I testified at the State House in Columbia on 4 different occasions now. And I've crusaded all over the state, meeting with every top government official, governors, congressmen, state representatives, Fortune 500 business leaders, media outlets of all type, trying to make sure that they understand what's needed to bring racial equality and justice into the school systems throughout the state. I think South Carolina has made some great strides. I'm proud of what they've done. I'm proud of the role I played as a leader in some of that. And I used a lot of what I learned from my dad as far as being resilient and determined and driven.
I like to think of the expression, all men are created equal, Pathfinder, and the way that you were able to get youngsters so interested that they'd want to come to school. You've got the 5th graders running races. You actually built up a pretty good sweat when you ran around the schoolyard and all the kids got a chance.
Sure, yeah, you know, you bring back a great memory.
Yeah, that you could tell us something.
No, you bring back my first year as a language arts teacher for 5th grade. First day of school, I lined up all the kids. I didn't have any white children in any of my teams since I coached down here, and I didn't have any white students in my class my first year of teaching. And what I thought I would do was line them all up and let them race me at recess and take away some of their energy. Well, what I didn't know is, I was still in pretty good shape, and I beat them the first time, and then the next 4 or 5 races that I had the whole school racing against me, and I was finishing dead last, and I couldn't wait to go home and take a nap. You learn a lot. I studied hard at the Citadel in graduate school to learn about the South where I was, so I wouldn't make any poor judgments and make any bad moves. You have to listen. I was in a different part of the country where things are a lot different, and socially, it's still different, but we've come a long way. But there are some bills that have to be still changed because people, unfortunately, are still going back to using certain stereotypes. That's become a real problem in our society. And that's where people like yourself and anyone else, all the educators, they're all working at trying to break through those stereotypes. I wasn't alone in how hard I worked. My friends from Worcester State have impacted their schools and their community the same way I have down here. Maybe I've taken it to another level. But when I think back and I look at my book and I read it, I truly can say, I think I'm reading about someone else. It's out of body surreal.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I accomplished what I did as far as having a beautiful home, a wife, a relationship, a great relationship with my grandchildren, my daughters, after those tough times where I cried for 48 straight hours on the road, coming from Worcester to Charleston and not knowing where I was going to even stop and if I was going to stay. The values that I learned from growing up in Worcester, I brought down with me, and I impacted society beyond what I could have ever dreamed of. And that's my American dream.
Pathfinder, how did you handle some prejudice that you faced, at high school, junior high school and high school? You mentioned people were laughing at you when you said you wanted to play for the Boston Celtics. What about any ethnic prejudice that you experienced?
Yeah, there was. At Worcester Boys Train, there were a couple that were picking on me. There weren't that many Jewish students there, and I was easy to be picked on. I had a nickname on the basketball team as Pee Wee because I was 4 feet 11, 125 pounds when I was in 9th grade. And I think the fact that I was making a fool of myself when I would say I wanted to play in the NBA made me an easy target, both maybe because of my faith and because of my immaturity. And it was tough. I had a tough 4 years there. It toughened me up for when I came here, though. I couldn't have done what I did without the experiences I had at trade.
To have personally experienced some prejudice, and you try to help overcome it. The importance of education, sports, and trying to let people know that racial justice is the way to go. So I think your book has accomplished so much. You really got that point across. I'm sure your readers, and again, the people that I've spoken with, family members that I sent the book to, and also a lot of friends from education, from the judicial system, they appreciate what has been done and has been accomplished, and I'm waiting for the sequel to get the message across. There's so much talk about white supremacy. We've got to work to fight that, and I think that your book certainly is a beginning, and I look forward to working with you to further the message.
My sister Diane, she's told me this about 15, 20 times since I wrote the book. She says, they need to do a movie. And she says, who do you want to play Pathfinder? I said, Nicolas Cage. And she says, why Nicolas Cage? I said, because I couldn't stand him in the movies. He acted as obnoxious as I do.
I think
we have the same personality.
Book, which is so well received, I think you've got to get that book out. So I can see the potential, the way it's been received. I think you're going to be getting some calls.
You might get a movie part.
Sure. I'll be Bill Russell.
But, I had a lot of people, my parents supporting me, Brian Hamill, Mayor, certainly Mayor Cooney and Attorney Burtenberg and his wife Lois. I didn't do this on my own. So when, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to say it took a lot of that village that raises a kid. They stayed with me into adult years, thankfully. And I'm appreciative. I'm appreciative of everything I have. And I ended up landing on my feet, living a dream, a real dream, because when I read my own book, I really think I'm dreaming. I can honestly say that. I would have never expected this ending or this life that I have for the last 32 years. And I owe a lot of it to my wife, Barbara. What a support. We're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary real soon. For those that didn't think I could do it, I have a great relationship with her.
Well, I've been honored to be part of Mark's story, his odyssey, his mission to bring about racial justice. There's so many problems we're having. Mark is to be commended for what he's done, and very honored to be joining the Channel 192 and stay connected. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you so much, Mark and Mayor Tim Cooney. Be sure to get your own copy of Mark's book, They Call Me Pathfinder, Education, Basketball, and Equality. It's available online and at your local bookstore.
Stay safe, stay hydrated, and stay connected by watching the government's channel, Station 192.